Hello, I'm Patrick Cruz, and you're watching Rappler Talk. The Philippines has long been ruled by political dynasties. So it came as a surprise when President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., himself the son of a dictator and a member of a long-entrenched political clan, asked Congress to finally pass an anti-dynasty law. Just a day before that, a coalition of reform-minded dynasts, academics, and public servants launched a new push for that very measure. This follows the recent flood control corruption scandal. Joining us today is one of the co-conveners of the Anti-Dynasty Network, Mikee Defensor, a lawyer and daughter of former Anakalusugan Representative Mikee Defensor. Welcome, ma'am.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's start with the first question. So why did you decide to join the Anti-Dynasty Network?
So initially, it was really a lot of informal talks with professors, colleagues, about the issues of today. And we really came into agreement. Now, we really need to start doing something because we already see how bad the state of politics in the country is. And we attribute this largely to the concentration of power to specific families, diba? And I mean, it's about time. The anti-dynasty provision, the prohibition on anti-dynasty is constitutionally mandated. As early as the 1987 Constitution, you already have a mandate to Congress to pass the anti-dynasty bill. And until now, it hasn't been passed. Nakita naman natin na talaga kung yung nagiging epekto ng dynastic politics sa ating bansa. Kaya we got together and we said na, now's the perfect time to push for something like this. Especially at a time where, there's really a lack of trust in government. We felt na now's the time for them to really redeem themselves. If you're serious about reform, if you're serious about change, then pass the anti-dynasty law now.
Right. We've seen a lot of patterns recently on sa flood control, corruption scandal. We've seen those who are involved in the corruption scandal are mostly part of a political dynasty,
yes.
Right?
I mean, it's the kind of system that dynastic politics perpetrates, diba? I mean, kita mo naman sa ICI, it's the president that established the ICI, right? Tapos, sino yung mga iniimbestigahan ng ICI? Pinsan niya, anak niya, diba? And, I mean, this is why, the problem has become so bad kasi wala nang checks and balance in government. Kasi yung dapat na nag-check sa isa't isa, magkakapamilya na. Ganun na yung nangyayari ngayon, di ba?
Family affair.
Yes, even with the provincial and the municipal, you have the father as a governor or yung anak mayor, vice versa, di ba? Di ba dapat sila lang din yung nag-check and balance sa isa't isa. So, ang nangyayari is yung interest ng pamilya ang nauuna kaysa sa interest ng taong bayan. And that's exactly the kind of system, the kind of politics that we want to put a stop to. Because otherwise, how are we going to achieve genuine reform? How will we encourage more people to run for public service, diba, to engage in public service? How are we going to get more people to participate in government kung sila-sila lang din naman yung nandun?
Right. So, interesting yung composition of your group. The Anti-Dynasty Network, it also composed of some dynasty yourself,
yes.
Is part of a political clan. Yes. So I'm curious, how did your father react about it? Or meron bang conversation about it? Ano ba yung position ng father mo about the anti-political dynasty bill or law? And as well as siguro yung relatives mo rin.
Okay, as far as I recall, my grandmother, the late Senator Mikee Defensor Santiago, was also pushing for an anti-dynasty bill. As to whether or not she filed something, sorry, I can't really recall. Mm-hmm. Yung dad ko naman, parang, like I mentioned earlier, hindi naman talaga kasi naging parang sabay-sabay kami humawak ng posisyon. Wala namang naging ganun sa amin. It was more of successive, which is also bad. But with my dad, I think this is not something naman siguro na I will get in trouble for, di ba? Because who doesn't want for me, who doesn't want an anti-dynasty bill? I mean, if you're serious about changing the system and improving our institutions, just genuine reform. And if that's, which I hope, like that's what my dad wants too, diba? Then I don't see anything wrong with supporting an anti-dynasty bill. For me naman, personally, it's also a call to younger generations belonging to dynastic families to also put an end to this kind of practice of inheriting positions. Kasi hanggat walang umaayaw, di ba, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung pagmana ng posisyon. Kasi ganun na yung naging kultura, na normalize na siya. And it's become so bad na hindi lang successive ang paghawak ng posisyon. Ngayon, nakikita natin na we also have what we call fat dynasties, diba? Yung sabay-sabay na paghawak ng posisyon. Kadalasan sa mga LGUs natin, lalo na sa mga provinces, sa mga probinsya, kadalasan yung mayor, yung governor, city council, sanggunian, diba? Sila-sila lang din eh. It's just the same last names. And I mean, sorry na lang, I mean, no offense talaga to anyone, pero hindi naman talaga lahat qualified eh. Karamihan dyan, kaya lang naman sila nasa posisyon precisely because minana nila yung posisyon. And for me, like, even with my relatives, this is not something I encourage. In fact, whenever people run in my family, diba, we always have that conversation na, bakit tayo na naman? Kailangan ba talaga tayo? And then it goes back to the, kung hindi tayo, sino? Diba? Parang kasi it's just one family after another, magpapalitan lang sila, diba? Normally, gano'n naman yun eh. When you oust another dynasty, it's just another dynasty that replaces it.
Right.
And for me, that's precisely the problem, which is why I think na we shouldn't just be banning also, yung tinatawag na fat dynasty or yung sabay-sabay. Pero also yung mga thin dynasties. Kasi we effectively prevent people from inheriting positions, di ba? Yun naman yung original form ng dynasties. Kaya, yun.
I'm curious about parang paano naging ganito yung thinking mo, especially growing up with a family of politicians.
Yeah.
Parang what shaped your view about dynasties?
To be honest, if you grow up in a family like this, tapos ang sinasabi lagi, politics is in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Kaya ako parang I went to law school. First I was a political science student. And I think that's where really my thinking was shaped. Kasi initially, I went to college thinking na, okay, after all this, ako na yung susunod. Yun na rin yung magiging path for me.
So may influence na ganun?
Yeah, kasi parang iniisip mo, iikot ka, ang sasabihin nila sa'yo na, uy, nasa dugo mo, ikaw na susunod. Or, alam mo yun, parang, as a child, diba, in your formative years, if yan yung lagi mong naririnig, tapos nakikita mo na ganun yung nagiging practice in other LGUs, for example, na sunod-sunod lang din, may mga baluarte na tinatawag, diba? Parang, so, iisipin mo rin talaga na, okay, ganito pala talaga yung kalakaran. It's normal, diba? That's like what I said, it's been normalized. But, which is why college was very important for me. Kasi when I went to college, that's when I met people who actually had the courage to talk to me about this, to hold me accountable. Tapos doon mo din ma-realize na, tama naman, diba? Pag inaral mo na talaga lahat. At the end of the day, it's never good na power, resources is concentrated only within a specific family or specific clan, diba? So, yun yung naging sa akin. I have my Jesuit education to thank. Just kidding. Yun. Kaya, sana, kaya rin kami nagsasama-sama, diba? You have sina Kiko D, you have Vico, you have Ika Robredo, all these members of political dynasties coming together and saying na, it doesn't have to be us, right? We shouldn't be the default for this just because nagiging family like lineage na or pamana na yung pwesto. Parang it shouldn't be us. And like what I said, unless we put an end to this, it's going to be, the vicious cycle will continue. Parang more and more family members. Diba? Like, dati, sunod-sunod lang naman eh. Ngayon, sabay-sabay na. So, yeah.
Karapala na.
Yeah. And mas lalala pa if we don't put an end to this now.
Yeah, speaking of pamana, have you been offered to run? Offered, quote-unquote, kasi. Yeah, and how did you resisted it if so?
Honestly, sa akin naging simple lang kasi malinaw sa akin from the beginning na parang ito yung paniniwala ko. I don't think that I'm the one who deserves to be in the position just because I share the same last name as my father. But, you know, more than that, parang hindi kasi siya, how do I say this? More than that, more than the saying no to it, parang it was very simple for me to say no kasi like to begin with, it wasn't something that I was really interested in doing anyway. Pero yun, I guess it's just as simple as saying no. But I understand din naman na for others, parang, you know, they have a burden. I mean, they have a greater burden rin. Hindi sila makahindi sa pamilya nila. Alam mo yun, parang they're gonna get cut off.
Yeah, culture, diba?
Parang mahirap rin manindigan, lalo na pag within your family, di ba? Kasi lalo na yung Filipino culture, parang we're taught to really respect our parents na sobrang secret ng family. Parang bakit ka ayaw sa pamilya mo, ganun. Pero for me, I just had to get out of that mindset and really understand, like, you know, the underlying issue. It's not even underlying. Kita naman namin, you know, the problem with, the apparent problem with being in a, you know, a dynastic family.
I'm curious yung reception of your family. Paano yun? Yung saying no?
I've always been very vocal naman kasi rin about what I think. To a fault, actually. So, I mean, syempre naging topic rin to ng discussions within our family. Pero, I guess, swerte din ako na hindi naman umabot sa punto na alam mo yun, hindi na kita anak pag di ka tumakbo. Wala namang ganun. Kaya naging madali din sa akin para humindi.
Okay. Now, let's get into the details. Yung campaign nyo for anti-dynasty law. How does the Anti-Dynasty Network want to define or regulate political dynasties?
So we proposed for 5 provisions. So the first one is no relatives from the same family up to the 4th civil degree of consanguinity and affinity can hold successive and simultaneous national positions. So bawal magsabay sa presidente, vice-presidente, senador. Tapos sinabi rin namin na bawal din na sabay-sabay pag same constituency. So, siguro to distinguish lang din from the bill of sina Congressman Sandro Marcos and Speaker Boji D. Kung mapapansin mo sa kanila, hiniwalay nila talaga yung definition ng province at saka ng municipality. Ang sa amin, pareho lang kasi yung constituency niyan eh. I mean, let's not forget that, you know, people in the same municipality also vote for the governor,
right,
diba? So may overlap. Kaya sa amin, malinaw sa amin na pag governor ka, hindi ka na pwede maging, or kung governor ka, yung kapamilya mo, up to the 4th civil degree of affinity or consanguinity, hindi na pwede maging mayor, for example. Hindi na pwede maging miyembro ng sanggunian, for example. Tapos, we also separated yung sa district and yung sa party list. So, if you're a district representative and a party list nominee, hindi kayo pwedeng magsabay with relatives in local office. So, yan yung example na kung si governor, father mo, hindi ka na pwede tumakbo ng party list representative. Even if, kahit na, di ba, national naman ang scope ng Congress. The fact na you have the same constituency, you operate in the same territory, di ba? Yun yung nagiging problema. Kaya yun yung ayaw din namin na magkasabay-sabay. So, yun. So, aside from yung simultaneous holding of office by family members, we also are against the successive holding of office. So yan yung kadalasan pagkatapos ng father, yung asawa naman, yung anak. Diba? Ayaw din natin yun.
Yeah, about the party list nominees, parang typically, sa Philippines, nagiging backdoor siya for
Yes.
an extra space for political dynasty. How would you?
You know what? Now, like more than 50%, I think, of nominees of party list representatives belong to political families, which is so frustrating kasi ang political party, ginawa talaga yan for marginalized and underrepresented sectors. Ngayon, na-hijack na rin to ng mga political families. Dahil pati dyan nagpapatakbo sila. Minsan nga dyan, first nominee yung asawa, second nominee yung anak, third nominee, and so on and so forth, di ba? Ang pangit na talaga tignan. I mean, wala na talaga silang tinira for marginalized and underrepresented sectors to participate in government, di ba? I mean, more than 50%, that's crazy.
Right. So now, although na-mention mo earlier, in the House, merong bill na sinubmit si Ilocos Norte Representative Sandro Marcos and House Speaker Boji D. What do you make about this version of their bill?
You know, my problem with the bill really is it doesn't tackle what we call yung thin dynasties, diba? Yung successive holding of position. Yan nga yung pinaka naging parang root ng political dynasties in the country, diba? If you take a look at the bill, specifically Section 5, which provides for the prohibitions, you will see there na puro simultaneous, nothing, it's silent about successive holding of positions. Yun nga yung sinasabi nating ayaw natin, di ba? Kasi pinapamana yung kapangyarihan. So what happens is, when you're an incumbent and you have access to, state resources are at your disposal, di ba? You have an undue advantage eh. Maraming, di ba, ang gusto na nga natin is we want more people to participate in government. We want more people to have access to public service. And if you encourage that kind of dynasty, if you don't prevent or prohibit that kind of dynasty, ang mangyayari dyan, yung mga incumbent, sila na yung may makinarya, sila na yung may pera, may undue advantage. So ikaw na nakarapat-dapat, alam mo yon, ikaw na may aktual na sektor na nire-represent, di ba? Sa simula pa lang may barrier na sa'yo eh. Hindi ka na makapasok. Kasi, with the recent flood control scandal, alam na natin ngayon kung magkano talaga nakukuha ng mga congressmen sa corruption. With that alone, nasa bilyon. Kaya mo ba labanan yun na ganun kalaking makinarya ang gagamitin sa eleksyon? Di ba? So, it's really... Kaya nga I always say, we're no longer electing officials, di ba? We're just anointing them. Kasi sila lang din naman. We're left with no other choice. And number one, that's my issue with the bill. But aside from that, number two, it doesn't really tackle yung issue rin nung parang... So the studies show na in provinces where there's a high concentration of political dynasties, dyan din yung may napakataas na mga poverty rate. So, ang nangyayari dyan, sa mga, especially in those areas, if you don't prevent that, diba? Kung sino si mayor, si governor, si mayor na nag-check ng budget ni Gov, magkamag-anak lang din, or, diba? Yung nawawala na talaga yung system of checks and balance, even within, in our provinces. And that's something that the bill fails to address. Kasi kadalasan, dyan talaga tayo nagkakaproblema. May high concentration, lalo na sa mga probinsya, at sa mga municipalities. So, parang naging blind siya sa reality ng kung paano ba yung nagiging kalakaran dyan sa mga probinsya and sa munisipyo. Which, for me also, like, diba, when I first read the bill, ang una kong inisip, paano matatamaan si Congressman D sa bill na to? Barely, diba? So, for me, there's still time to talk about this. There's still time to give our suggestions, our comments to the bill, diba? It's just a House bill right now. We have time to talk about it. So for me, I really urge, if Speaker D and Congressman Marcos is serious about reform, and they're serious about, truly addressing the issue of political dynasties and opening up the electoral system to, to be more inclusive to everybody, then, be serious about the provisions that you are going to implement, diba? Wag naman yung maglalagay ka dyan, kung wari hanggang 4th civil degree, iisipin mo na agad na, mas restrictive to sa bill ng karamihan ng mga congressman na pinapasa, diba? Kasi usually hanggang 2nd degree lang. So, sa unang tingin, maganda siya tignan kasi 4th degree hanggang barangay, diba? Pero kung tutuusin, kung aaralin mo talaga, paano sila matatamaan dito, di ba? If at all, parang very watered down yung provisions, di ba? Pero like I said, I don't wanna antagonize them because now really is the time to cooperate, to pressure Congress to pass a real anti-dynasty law.
Yeah, parang I think one of the provisions din or parang lack of that provision, yung it doesn't prevent yung politicians of the same family occupying different municipalities or cities in the same provinces. So parang nagiging mas disperse yung power.
You know what? Yung isa ko pang naisip dyan is sa province kasi, so under the Constitution, a province is entitled to 1 legislative district. So there are Supreme Court cases na nangyayari. Parang, di ba, si province, gagawa siya ng municipality, for example, na yan, entitled na yan to a legislative district. Diba? So, kung kunwari, and there are Supreme Court cases na it doesn't meet, for example, a place doesn't meet the definition of a province, pero gagawin siyang province para magkaroon ng legislative district. And we all know na, more legislative districts equals more pork. So, kung ikaw, parang, diba, if you belong to a political family, kung natatalo yung anak mo dito, o magbuo ka na lang ng isa, meron na rin siyang allocation, diba? Ito yung mga harms na hindi na-address ng bill. And there's so many, like top of my head, yun lang yung naiisip ko. Pero napakarami pa talagang, napakaraming problema na hindi na-address ng bill nila.
Yeah, interesting yun. Naisip ko siyang visually, parang yung anak mo, pinagawan mo ng bahay para meron siyang i-occupy na seat of power.
And kadalasan ganun di ba? Pag natatalo, parang, ito na lang, let me cut this district for you.
Yeah,
dito ka na lang, di ba? Yeah, so, ayun. And this is the reality that we face today, di ba? Nakikita naman natin kung paano nila protektahan ng isa't isa because they belong to the same family. So, ang sa akin lang, never magkakaroon ng accountability, never magkakaroon ng pagbabago kung sila-sila lang din humahawak ng pera ng bayan.
Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit further dun sa details. Merong families na parang somehow nagsistrategize, ikaw dito, ikaw yung maglalaban for this position. But there are also families na nag-aaway-away for the same position. Recently, nakita natin yung fallout between the president and his sister. Nung previous elections, we have the B-Nice of Makati. The Ortegas, yeah.
Nag-away-away din sila.
Aguilars of Las Piñas. Ang daming ganong
sobrang dami
situation. So, how would you address how would the anti-dynasty law address yung politicians fighting from the same family, fighting for the same position or same area?
So, dito kasi, di ba, ang sinasabi natin, pag may incumbent na or pag may tatakbo for a specific position, like for example, let's limit it to yung sa national. Pag yung situation ni President Marcos and ni Senator Amy would never have been allowed if this law has been passed. Kasi ang sinasabi nga natin, kung presidente ka, hindi ka na pwede magkaroon ng kamag-anak na senador, di ba? So now, yung sinasabi mo na, paano kung mag-strategize sila? Tapos, dahil magkakaaway, I think napag-usapan na rin namin din ng group namin. Na, for example, tatakbo si Vico, di ba? Dahil lang ayaw ng mga diskaya kay Vico, magpapatakbo sila ng kamag-anak lang ni Vico, magbabayad sila para ma-disqualify si Vico, di ba? Paano i-address yun? Ang sa akin, for me, first and foremost, yung mga ganyang problema ng mga pamilya, I prefer na internal na lang yan to them. So kung mag-aaway-away sila, kung sino papatakbuhin, let that be their problem. Pero as to yung technical aspect ng kung ano ba yung gagawin natin, like pag tumakbo si ganyan, parang sino magdi-disqualify, motu proprio ba, yung mga details na yan. For me, I leave it up to the technical expertise of COMELEC to determine this. Kasi marami rin naman tayong models in place. Like, for example, you have yung sa SK, di ba? There's an anti-political dynasty law. Sa BARM, di ba? Meron na yung sa Bangsamoro Electoral Code, meron din silang prohibition on political dynasties. So we have existing frameworks that we can look at to see what the best case scenario would be for this specific law. Pero again, I don't want us to get stuck into these kinds of discussions. Kasi these are precisely the same kinds of discussions that shut down initiatives in the past. Diba? Sa definition pa lang nagkakatalo na sila. Kaya for me, importante lang muna na ipasa na muna natin to. Like, diba? Let's talk about our ideal. Let's talk about what we want to see in an anti-dynasty law. Let's discuss. And then from there, we can start yung nitty-gritty. Let's leave that to the admin agencies. Let's leave that to COMELEC, the constitutional body tasked with matters of election, diba? Let's leave it to them to discuss these things. Pero anyway, I don't think na this will be a deadlock naman for us moving forward. Kasi like I said, we already have existing frameworks na pwede naman ang pag-aralan yan. Pero ang sa akin, kung may ganyan, parang di bahala sila mag-away-away. Kasi, di ba, mas okay na sa akin yung sila yung nagkakaproblema kung sino yung tatakbo versus voters are left with no other choice but the two of them.
Right, okay. Well, even before, meron ng several pushes for an anti-dynasty bill. Lagi siyang nasustall in Congress. But there's little to no progress na nangyayari. This time, what gives you hope na merong move, magiging law na talaga siya?
What gives me hope? The government is a sinking ship. Diba? Kita naman natin in recent ratings, negative na yung trust ratings. Kaya, ito yung perfect opportunity na pumasok tayo at sabihin sa kanila na kung seryoso kayo, if you want our trust back, diba? At the very least, do this. If you're serious about accountability, if you're serious about reform, diba? If you're serious about holding your family members accountable, then pass this law. So kaya I'm hopeful kasi ngayon, hindi naman nabago na ang presidente nagsasabi sa Kongreso na ipasa ang anti-dynasty bill. This is not the first time. Pero now you have the Speaker of the House, who is a member of one of the largest political dynasties in the country, saying na, I want an anti-dynasty law. You have the presidential son also pushing for this bill, diba? Parang for me, ito na yung last-ditch effort nila to really save face. Which is good for us, diba? Let's take advantage of it. That's why, unlike in the past na isasantabi lang to, ngayon I'm hopeful kasi lalo na more and more people are angry. And more people, there's an increasing number of people who are demanding talaga for accountability. And sa tingin namin, ito yung isa sa mga solusyon para maayos, diba? It's a start to fixing our democratic institutions and, truly making government more inclusive, holding public officers more accountable. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of people are angry nga, and that's really evident in the protests in the streets. Although there's also some segment of the population na fan of a dynasty. Parang some say na they keep voting for this political dynasties because mababait naman sila and they benefit from them. Andyan yung ayuda, yung scholarships. How would you convince or parang what would you say about that situation and what's wrong with a dynasty kung nagbe-benefit naman yung mga publiko in their own eyes?
That argument has been the same argument since like the beginning. So ever since pinag-usapan tong anti-dynasty law, ever since 1987, ganyan na yung nagiging argument nila eh. Parang, bakit mo pipigilan yung mga tao na talagang tumutulong or, you know, the good dynasts? Pero for me kasi, you know, this has been the argument for the longest time, but the data says otherwise, di ba? We already have so many studies. The numbers are there, di ba? Let's not ignore the numbers. Kita naman na in places kung saan talagang malalakas ang mga political dynasty, doon din pinaka naghihirap ang taong bayan. Kasi ang nangyayari dyan, nagiging patronage politics na lang, di ba? Yung mga short-term na ayuda, short-term assistance, di ba? Pero in those places, kung papansinin mo, wala rin namang long-term reforms eh. Or mga long-term solutions to uplift people from poverty. Nothing like that. Kasi nasa interest din naman nila na naghihirap ang mga tao. Dahil kung hindi naghihirap ang mga tao, wala na yung mga ganyang patronage, di ba? Wala na yung mga direct ayuda, di ba? Eh, yung 500 pesos, hindi na yun makakabili ng boto mo. Yung mga ganyan. Kaya although, sige, fine, there are good dynasties and we're not here to attack specific families, but at the end of the day, diba, parang the harm outweighs whatever good they've done. Because we already see like the danger of just having a specific few hold power. Diba?
Right. Also interestingly, after you released this statement, a lot of people have signed the petition, like the call or your statement expressing their support. So far, kumusta yung yun, support? Ano yung background ng mga people na nag-sign up?
We're so excited kasi ang daming sumali and people from all walks of life. So yung iba dito, hindi din sila organized. Karamihan dito, mga bata, mga like-minded, reformists. Kaya we're happy na marami ding sumali sa amin. So the challenge really now is how to really consolidate ourselves, our efforts. Parang initially we want to hold a dialogue with everybody just to hear everyone out. Parang hindi naman pwede na kami-kami lang din yung nag-uusap, 'di ba? Gusto rin namin we also want to discuss with other people from all sectors, from all walks of life. Because our main goal for this network really is to form a citizen-driven movement for the anti-dynasty and for other relevant and necessary electoral reforms.
Siguro to wrap up yung this interview, maybe you can have a call out, parang how can the public engage and support this campaign? Who can join this campaign?
Okay, anyone can join this campaign. You can just sign up on our Facebook page, the Anti-Dynasty Network. And then you'll just hear from us soon. So right now, we're just talking about next steps, really, how to convene everybody. Kasi nagulat din kami. We were overwhelmed by the number of people that signed up. We did not expect... surprise. We did not expect... when I last checked, parang nasa 700. Oh, pero I don't know about today or the past few days. Pero, ayun, umabot na sa ganun. And we're very overwhelmed, but also happy to be getting this much support. But more than that, it's an indication na a lot of people are really serious about wanting or demanding accountability and demanding reforms in government. Kaya, ayun, we're happy na a lot of people are joining. Anyone can join, no matter what your political color is. We don't want to limit this to, kami-kami lang. We want to be as inclusive as possible. Kasi ulit, we believe na parang, alam mo yun, kung mas marami kayong nag-uusap-usap, kung mas marami kayong nagtutulungan para dito, then siguro naman mas pakikinggan tayo.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mikey, for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you so much.
So that wraps up this episode of Rappler Talk. For more updates, download the Rappler app and join the Philippine Politics chat room. Again, this is Patrick Cruz. Thanks for watching.